Good morning, America. And where countries bleed, where the species body is bleeding, Ukraine, Russia, we should thank God that we have president slash chief, one leader, and where and how they have that additional value. And how, because it was how we fell last to a method that would have been worse had not our founders had the better than honor and privilege. When I speak about privilege, to have the Native Americans had joined with them. To an extent, they already had sustained against Native Americans, fighting against Native Americans, and then additionally kept the colonists that were already themselves used remotely by the breaching method, the human fact cheaping nature breaching method. That is one of the things that slavery is always treatments of black are and were always by the breaching method. One of the ways they got away with it was blaming on, and how they got away with it is blaming on other things, others, and or on themselves. The real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. So, since semi-ancient times, we've been in a trap that has complete possession over the human fact-cheaping nature. Since before the founders of America were born, since before the founders of Russia were born, since before the founders of Ukraine were born, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures have to do with were designed. All identity ground locations were tacked into nature for this, and then they made exceptions that are fake, ulterior from how nature is exceptions and is exception nature in demonstration of itself, the identity of relationship to itself that is really going to cause positive or negative value nature progressions. So yeah, the rights. So our founders had to hide their roles, counter extorting our other founders. Everyone afraid of everyone and even themselves to even speak because that's what the laws were against, because that's what the breaching method was against. And everyone was supposed to pretend other or that would be sensed. And through a whole bunch of other motivations, nature's needs, interests. Therefore, corruption manifests of individually grouped and together, but all bound. And then further to all locations without anyone fathoming. From semi-ancient times, it knew. So, rather than keep this and use it for my art, a movie about the devil, these are critical things. This is where the human species is bleeding. So even where and how generals and armies and leaders might have right to have misinformation about each other and counter misinformation and torture each other, never had the right to ignore, which is countries A through Z are the victim of. Also recorded blaming other things other than themselves from which it's been demonstrating. Especially the cities, overtly / insidiously, simultaneously. The suburbs before our founders were even born were already conceived as the model, the scale of things, vaccines, the science of shared identity. There's one way to fight where even when people lose, it wins because it's a better quality of fact. It's using what leads us, the hyper, which are actually hyper simultaneous. To discern that which is distinct from other identities of simultaneous nature. Your heart is a simultaneous nature, but it is simultaneously a sequence nature relative to your complete nature. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal, I'm not a judge, I'm military. Vaccines is the science of shared identity, though. See, but the meanings to it and the means of revelations and their protraction have been not known. This method knew that entertained victim reactions would have to counter as fact cheating nature. The real causes of negative value nature, progression, act, nature, all locations as fact cheating nature would have to be able to counter the real causes of criminal insidiousness, natures of positive and negative treatments first. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do it correctly because they would have to do it relative to things and instances that are already being and haven't been used remotely. How the sciences really stand, abridged, and how they really know the extent of that, value of that. See, this is where and how. Only the extent of it is debatable. Language is about the invisible but still discernible. We are following the identity of relationship that it has as a volume, a verb, because then it's distinct as a main verb, or inflected as a present or past participle, not just to show us its identity of relationship to itself. And this goes with the subject, where and how it goes with life's distinctions. We discern things because it wants and needs us. We can be systems other than its own, as we have been since some ancient times. But it will continue to demonstrate negative value to progress to nature. So we need to put in place in Ukraine what we should only feel like gain. And in Russia too, and with the names calling, some of that has been used originally and still to prevent, for example, the simultaneous revelations that are apparent where and how the physics, metaphysics, and identity are distinctly, non-distinctly, and are simultaneously, hyper simultaneously affronted when people make opinions / convictions regarding things relative to treatments of black / white, black pupils, peer. We must be the species body trained, vaccines, prepare that way to fight. It hurts not one, but perfection / hyper perfection exists. But the experts in the law will tell you other because they haven't had been inherited criminally foreign influence. Positive victim predators of a method that handed them positive and negative treatments that involved as roles that simultaneously were self-valuing sequence shifts, relevant, for example, to the relevance of this with all subjects. It has relevance in sociology, it has relevance to psychology, delusions wrought simultaneously criminally foreign influence, fact cheating nature, premises, theories, delusions, all simultaneously, and uses of that. So simultaneously, even when they had Jim Crow laws, the breaching method would measure and maintain also through other countries individually grouped together themselves the same, needs to defend treatments to its predicate acts delivery system method, its criminal insidiousness to nature delivery system, like wrongdoers, mass wrongdoing, mass predicate acts delivering roles. Increasingly, while that was in his being sustained, increasingly people were blaming other things, others, and ourselves even more incorrectly. The real cause of negative nature progression, that's also through additional motivations. Again, those nature needs interest are also additional to the one that's relevant, and with influences at all instances, and with the recollection. So before computers, before our founders were even born, the republic wasn't there. There's an ancient republic, and even the same ancient republic was a database relationship. And see, then it became forged as a hyper pseudo sophistication as the only sophistication / non-sophistication, increasingly self-valuing, and this used remote, whether a victim predator since the youngest ages, for example, relevant to the importance of this. So just like in physics, when you don't have physics, metaphysics, and identity science /S study connect. You guys are experts on measuring, hurting each other, torturing each other, threatening each other. Oh, and everyone missed how used remotely too, because it's used remotely for world wars. So even though it's nobody's fault, it's what has perfect uses of fact human nature oriented predicate X rules. It's right, it's relative to the same outcome /S. In other words, so you guys, even if you blamed on things wrongly, but honestly, the real causes of things like witch trials, even if they made them up, how they were our simultaneous relationship to slavery, in other words, and the responses to that, the same way as responses to you know uses of black by the law by a breaching method. See, people are fit like to sense and sensibilities towards treatments of the emotions that are with theories that are simultaneously with delusions, but with criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature aspects, and qualities and collusion /S. And that is one of the ways the subjects, um, where and how they share an identity is self-valued being and having been obfuscated. And that is an outcome /S that had that by that method that was sophistication here and there since before our founders were even born. So all they could do is they had to counter restore the other founders and put things like this for us to show that the things our teachers are teaching us are still criminally foreign influenced. It's not what our founders wanted us and needed us to say. They say get the Constitution unabridged, have no torture, have no identity theft, fraud slander /sequence shift self-value rules. See native value. The native species of the native pure species body. That's the system. If we go and buy another one, if we go by that one too, as long as we're trying to go by it, if we go by it wrong, the way is going to be demonstrated to continue access to that which is greater than and more finite than all of space / existence since it was first generated, and its complete volume that stays greater than and more finite than its complete volume, which is also simultaneously a forever nature. So these are things that it is constantly, and there are things that it is variably. But that is also where and how present is as our own too, temporary / lasting. Earth's distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to the rest of space nature. It's now self-valued, forced from here, lethal IDs. We didn't even, so billions into space for nothing progressive proper. The inherent, the active, and the progressive are bound by science /S, tactical ulterior than these conceived, and so to narratives, and so with excuses handed to the certain kinds of reactions A through Z, as the certain kinds of victims A through Z, no matter how powerful even a leader could get, even the most powerful leader, even Jesus Christ was crucified, fake courts, everybody only capable of entertaining and self-valuing criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments, which are simultaneously identity treatments that couldn't defend themselves, and us or anyone from, or you, from what really causes predicate acts at all locations at, and those fact treatment nature ones too, juxtaposed with other natures, but that was sustained. All that is used morally. It was removed by the motivations everyone misses too. It uses the identity ground locations though. It's discernible. See, but this is where everyone's caught at once. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones. See, but to keep order by this, so we have male and female judges that would handle this right, but also has been self-valued. This method knew that it was sophistication that understood how and why three branches of government are manifest, and exceptions and exception nature are a demonstration of the same thing. But those demonstrations have been replaced by unnatural ones, natural only as criminal and seditious nature, naturally defended as natural only through uses of criminal and seditious natures of positive and negative treatments, and of time treatments used simultaneously too fast, too slow, to get over on the quality of fact treatment nature that is actually the proper defense of and meaning of truth by the law, originally still prevented at locations, all, and at for all formal locations, sickly distinctly, effectively having kept how sickly not distinctly from being discerned. So this method knew that Americans would have to counter the real causes of predicate acts, delivery system method roles, which is one of the things always that slavery, I mean, see, when they say slavery too, obligations to teach about the slavery of our founding parents who did not have the free speech. North and South, we have obligations to understand how North and South. That's how the game starts off. Like like basketball, for example, the ball starts tangled and then it gets free. My team gets it free. I get the ball. They know I love it. They get the ball. I forgot the rap I wrote. In other words, so we could put parent plan. Like they have actual war exercise. The same armies, leaders, actual souls. There is no location. They have all leaders are above states. Differentially, the people and the leaders, but differentially, constantly, increasingly, that is being used remotely. In other words, you can't start separate the sides. You have to deal with the physics and metaphysics alone. So this is what is being having been prevented. Uses of where and how there is a metaphysical science /S that is the identity the sciences share, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously juxtaposed with and like as 2/3 of the value of the the physics and their identity of relativity. The rest of science has them, and their further identity's actual science, which is this species body. We are individuals because it will only stay that which has us forged, the individual groups. But this is its system that we are now other systems, all other from. So when we use the names of our country, it is no longer by and as its system. So it cannot afford to discern that which is most probable regarding archaeological evidences, regarding that which is hyper evidential. It is more probable that the ancients would teach about, would use yin yang and alpha and omega just distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, though, before the sciences became criminally foreign influence, while they were still going by and knowing how to cause evolution's fruits and gifts means out of nowhere. Couldn't fathom that humanity would forget this, or could, because it keeps demonstrating it. But it uses a method that causes positive or negative value nature progressions. See, we stayed, excuse me, they made means to cause positive value nature progressions. Like, in other words, so before our founders were even born, they had slavery in North and South America before it was even America, while it was colonies. And those colonies were themselves enslaved by the human fact nature breaching method, blaming other things, others, or selves for the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, natures at all locations, areas, and states. One of the evidences is the means of the might of our unity, if it was being and having been led by that actual parent care towards each individual. That which is one of the things that would be sensed. And that's one of the ways when humanity's self-valuing roles within that nature as an identity of negative value nature progression, when human volume, if the human volume is in an identity of negative value nature progression, and when that is self-valued, I forgot now. So one thing we could do, though, is put the parent plan, just like a war exercise. We have to understand uses of individuals' names are not uses of real premises. You have to understand, in other words, the people that are at the news locations, this is here and there. There is a theater suit and tie, mannerisms, peaceful speech, and hateful speech, and motivations for it, narratives that are fake. To an extent, they know as victims, the way as that, so their victim roles. Also, again, as extensions of, as exception nature from, so as different ways per phenomena acting within as the branches of government. And so increasingly needing to hide that. Shown needs to hide it and means to hide it, with instances at all locations. All locations were employed by this breaching method since before computers, since before our founders were born in countries A through Z. All locations, areas, and states became self-valued, criminally foreign influenced, because they had to counter it, required fact nature counter to it. And it already had complete possession over the capabilities of fact nature. And as roles with an identity theft /fraud/slander method, singular, that is one of the things it is simultaneously, non distinctly, against every American, against every Russian, against every Ukrainian, against every person of every modern country. And I know that if we ask them what our species bodies wants and needs us to ask, and using only premises, admitting this, that and how it cannot be denied. Every single modern country is on this trap. You have you have cities built, and you have suburbs built since before cars, with that method of slavery that came even since before our founders. And we know what is actually recorded. If we look honestly, people blamed what that caused on other things other than themselves because it wasn't their fault. But it's not just because it wasn't their fault, because they knew the Beachy method knew it was their fault, and we were going to say it wasn't their fault. And it employed that. It employs A, therefore B roles, passions and emotions, defenses that are offensively styles A through Z, incapable of dealing with the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous, incapable of dealing with the hyper evidential, incapable of dealing with the volume science that languages are actually, incapable of dealing with the value / value progression, the identity of value progression that computers are about actually, that electronics are about actually, that how and why, the identity of a cell, the identity of a cell nucleus, the identity of a cell body, the identity of a cell wall, how they share. They are bound 3 physical identities. They have 2 further identities of sequence / simultaneous nature, value to its complete identity, as discerned through how the identities of the cells are also shared, where the cell at the cell walls, and how also they share distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, sequentially / simultaneously. The value of it discerned through how, where, and how water and gases, in the middle minerals of Earth, interact with what's positive or negative to it. See, there are 5 distinct. There are 1/3/5 distinct identities of the same identity of positive that is making more of itself here as forever nature, where we are automatically temporary positive, but it is where it is making more temporary positive or negative for its system, though. Because in other words, this knew that we were going to have to and be shown to needs to say this, things like this. It gives it it makes victim predators. So at the youngest ages, we need to use phrases like criminal insidiousness, like wrongdoers, like victims, like victim predators. And we have to just use terms like identity without and be able to counter where and how. We have we'll quote experts, ones as doctors, and how they got away with it and get away with it originally and still is because where and how they are exception nature with the 3 branches of government. And so syntactically, when you have to tell on people involved with federal crimes with other countries, and with killers, even child abusers, there are identity ground locations with doctors with badges and guns. I already took part with a whole bunch of investigations of that. Originally and still, they can't defend themselves and afford anywhere, any identity ground location to use the revelations inherent where and how someone makes relativity, makes an opinion / conviction regarding our founders and the relativity of that method that was entrenched north and south that way. Until that is understood first, where everyone was afraid to even speak, one can't proceed and understand American history. And the breaching method knew that before. And they knew that our founders, whoever they would be, they came faster than they thought. But they knew whoever they would be, they would seek them out and make that, and they would just keep blocking down the phases to maintain remotely through the others already remote possessed, already not realizing they were defending science as abridged. And the breaching method knew that nature itself would keep demonstrating the breaching method itself to everyone. But it set it up only discernible through everyone. So if anyone tries to tell any individual of the species body, tries to use truth / hypertruth, that which can tell no lies, and then be auto-creator, then speak for all, tell all to rise, be trial tribes. The Constitution unabridged, Marbury versus Madison. Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. It's a course that did not simultaneously address and recognize the significance of the value of how a breaching method. Sometimes I know there are victim predators, but predators too. This is relevant to what we have to understand first before our founders were born. In every modern country, already methodically had been forged 1/3/5 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature that were criminally foreign influenced. And where and how they were being self-valued is where and how encounters to the real causes of negative value nature, progressions, action, natures, relevant, like fact, human nature, where they had to counter the real causes of predicate acts in the ancient times, of real causes of criminal insidiousness, and natures like wrongdoers at locations, areas, and states, relative to serious problems and threats, just like today, relevant to wars, relevant to uses of them, the defenses of them, and that relevant to only the sense and sensibilities of people at the only media locations, which are database locations now with computers, that is juxtaposed with that original uncharged and left by our founders to demonstrate, with the quality of free speech still being tortured out and prevented, and or they steal our words, attach us to fake words, fake ties to themselves and to others, the news media and their intelligence community. They got away with it and get away with it because then we get penalized. But see, the war kept and keeps that the outcome is that which had already had perfected use. They were since they were kids. They were victims of this, child abuse by this method. So don't pretend anyone that I said anything bad about anyone. You guys brought this up too. They force you to use other people's names because they forge and switch names into branch. While our side is guilty with each side, sickly, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, and hyper-simultaneously. And all that is used remote too. So in other words, we could discern this from ancient times, some from semi-ancient times, relevant to and ulterior from, as actually recorded, self-valued, being and having been criminally foreign influenced opinions and convictions, simultaneously inherent to, active to, and progressive with and as, and also, you know, those opinions and convictions through history and regarding history and regarding how to receive it and regarding how to receive debates regarding what's debatable or not and how to debate it with this. So they got away with physical delusions juxtaposed with uses of such overtly slash criminally foreign influence qualities of positive and negative treatments, identity treatments, where and how they justify the suburbs, trying to debate, pretend that they don't believe that they could perceive that the suburbs are criminally foreign influenced, tactically denatured, designed to cause negative value nature progressions, action nature, let alone that which was only capable of being as roles with urban and infrastructure means to it, and see all victims, but all victim predators where and how everyone blaming other things others and or themselves. And to know when even when you're in when you're in so they want the fact treatment nature through other motivations, natures, needs, interests used remotely too. Everyone needs self-value wars having been more and more because they're self-valuing right now to defend treatments that left out where and how we need a parent plan, an identity of the grounds, identity of plan that everyone could share because we already do share it. That which should sense, if it doesn't feel like a game, /S rolls with that breaching method. And so if we can blame this, we can blame syntactically, and we could afford, we could change country's eighth regime, instantly make everything better than free. Well, we could afford to fix the tactically denatured identity of the grounds, identity of relation to itself, the means to reveal evolution's fruits and gifts means from nowhere. A quality of fact to be nature that can't help be once we are the sciences unabridged. Its method of demonstration to us, which works with the order of the finite and the identity of the ground as nature, natural, not as criminal insidiousness, as natural. Just because something is temporary natural, it is not forever nature that is also positive unto itself. Where and how Earth's distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous difference / hyper indifference is still manifest. There is so this is what is actually most probable and most practical and is simultaneously discernible. But it requires a quality of fact, cheap in nature. Thank God that English was revealed to teach, for example, in other languages, because it has us as the sounds manifest as an identity of volume /S. The same way it has us manifest as way to be, it demonstrates about the invisible but still discernible. See how we are two hands, two feet, and one head. We are five distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature, an exception nature, and demonstration of the same thing regarding male or female. So we are one of the things it is. So what it looks like is all, in other words, we have to show what is actually simultaneously recorded. They have been readings of statutes that are criminally foreign influences, leaving out exception nature. using readings about the statutes regarding Facebook, using treatments of them at Congress, hiding and valuing having hid even the roles of the agencies with uses of Facebook, pages of child campuses, of courts for passion crimes, crimes against each age, the fact keeping that your intercity is tied where and how the systems and their all identity ground locations, names, A through Z, were kept relevant, actual motivations, natures, needs, interests, relevant to the hyper relevance of proper treatments of where and how. We have to use physics, metaphysics, and identity sciences distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously. So it's not complicated, it just takes a little bit longer. So boxing is stronger, more finite than computers, how they work, but while as how they work, its function slash S are greater and more finite, while as those of the computers. And so in other words, all we have to do is it should feel like games to both armies. In other words, we're going to come out of the negative value nature progression, not with theater, but understanding that and how this is tied to that theater at all locations. It is reliant upon people dying of crazy things to keep at all locations, areas, and states. All those identities of sophistication haven't been measured. Maintained victim predators applied at uses of other people's names. So we have identities. Identity works the way it does. For example, as a relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, as the invisible, but still discernible, as you know. On the extent it is debatable. See, but how and why people would be motivated to get and did were as actually reported, motivated getting away with blaming other things, others or ourselves. The real causes of negative value nature progressions acts of nature relative to witch trials and Jim Crow laws and other such things. Where and how did they come from? The breaching method slash S itself is discernible, but the process of discerning it simultaneously reveals what other people's logic and roles are also still in the furtherance of. And forgiveness is to, to get through, to get to the point where we can have people use the proper premises treatments. Otherwise, they'll maintain differentially, but increasingly so perfect through other remote possessions overall identity of the ground locations, including the interbranch. All exceptions, nature tied to them. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones kept needing to hide the same sequence as finite active progressive lives together. Simultaneously, physical delusions, ones for the breaching method propagated. Where and how, too. Simultaneously, consciously, they are placing, valuing having been replaced. The where and how manifested is the sciences where they share their identity. And it's conjunction to our syntax nature. Where and how is I'm not playing a game. This is greater than, more finite than. Where and how syntax works for computers, while as how they work. This is so we're going to have hyper journalism. I am also not a journalist. And lawyers originally still we're going to use what is hyper evidential to show how too they would self-value rules with identity theft, fraud, slanders, including in the form of police reports, falsified police reports, rules that are simultaneously used, criminally foreign influence uses of identity ground locations and instances where and how they weren't even present with these, and where and how they have the conception of all such. Fact, nature, formally, informally inclusion. So we have to trace this from where and how there is hyper criminal foreign influence. There are hyper criminal foreign influences. There is one that is hierarchical to then all the other ones. And then there's archetypal criminal enterprises. These are the victims maintained through the responses, complete remote possession of them at all locations. And that further at all locations to keep that, which is through motivations that have nothing to do with any of that. So it invests people using other people's names and making positive and negative treatment sequence treatments, and uses of those physical delusions and uses of illusions, where how there are fact, tribute, nature, predicate acts, and uses of them involved, and where and how it is increasingly valuable and necessary to demonstrate this is as a identity theft, fraud slash slander method. Again, this is where and how the value of physics, how it is distinctly, not distinctly, and simultaneously relevant, juxtaposed with the value of metaphysics and of as metaphysics are really. See, this course was just lost, replaced through name dropping. Research is a word that is used to, and slash values that is used to measure by the breaching method to measure and maintain roles with its fact, tribute, nature, possession of all locations, areas, and states that is manifest with the quote, shock and awe, unquote, responses to, words slash value progressions like slavery or like Jim Crow, phrases like Jim Crow or like Jim Crow laws, or words slash values like law, which is invisible but still discernible. And anything that's invisible but still discernible, like a subject or a predicate or a sentence, it comes also with the hyper visible but still discernible. And that comes also with what is further value to it as its complete system's complete relationship to itself. And that comes where and how prayer with the English language was a word slash value revealed necessary to teach the science slash S that English was revealed to teach. For example, the lowercase letters are what temporary positive looks like. And in other words, anything that's invisible but still discernible is not the hyper invisible. So in other words, the top of the uppercase letters, A through Z, the uppercase letters are temporary positive that we know is forever positive to itself, or it wouldn't be temporary positive. And as itself, that which is actually simultaneous, that's that which actually causes positive value, nature, progressions, acts, natures, and means from nowhere, as science actually, honestly, is perceived and presented and defended and relieved and revealed. The teacher cannot teach with chalk while holding shield. And the student with the gun can learn to write or learn of this forever's natures, where the species body's way to fight. Religion. Here, religion. War is gain slash S one way. So where species bleed, before this happened, what actually was is recorded is the relevance of that, which is denied the value of it as it is actually value progression. That and how we're the suburbs of Russia, Ukraine, and America. Our suburbs are since before our founding parents were born. They were involved with a slavery method against our founding parents, sickly distinctly against every colonist, sickly distinctly against Native Americans. They had sustained this against, perfected it before they even, colonists came over to get free from it. And while as it being used remotely as it. See, part of the system they were forcing had the system real, separated from them distinctly, non-distinctly and simultaneously, as what they were, from what is never revealed, fixed, because, in other words, the identity of the ground location at all locations, let alone was most overtly like New York City, and cities like that across the species body of volume. This is a semi-ancient trap. See, no one knows how to speak about, because everyone pretends that someone spoke for and or could speak for positive or negative or identity with integrity and not denying exceptions and exception nature. So you could have, in other words, the Constitution unabridged and Marbury versus Madison couldn't be simultaneously self-valued and entertain what was only allowed by what was already entrenched here in layers of other motivations, natures, needs, interests themselves, all used remotely. The corruption from it itself used remotely, organized by a database relativity to where and how we our syntax, nature manifest as value/value progression, as identity, no. I self-promote. See species body, where I am you. So Russia to Russia plan. We are lucky to have, we could get a temporary agreement instantly. And we have those means because we have denied by each of the countries, the other countries, legitimate needs and means to express how they are suffering. Because, even takes on democracy are weaponized. The Republic, even every take on the Republic is weaponized. Gone. So nature has been demonstrating since even the earth, the worms mowed the lawns, the facade of earth, the surface of the ocean looks nice, all plastic under, breaking down reportedly, demonstrably all junk, chemicals, medicines that they don't even make. They're putting fake, all kind of scams. Going, they want to complain about the water. The same ones complaining about the water. All we're sinners. No one knows. No one. Then, in other words, at locations, there is no place, not a theater. There is no cop. There is no judge. Yet free. George Washington could tell no lies. Marbury versus Madison could tell no lies. As the court first. See that was long, self-valued, measured, maintained. See, they maintain every individual of every identity, the ground location, including grouped and all together. And our countries are shared in ways they're not allowed to speak about. It's demonstrable. And So what we have to do is put that down, the parent plan. In other words, in other words, say, in other words, we're going to do this because, in other words, the people's opinions are sickly, distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously forcing leaders to entertain A, therefore B treatments and simultaneous denials of the reality of what is actual, except the value of exceptions, exception nature, and the actual value of sequence with, of things that came before, the value of it now. See, the science that would have revealed the answers to the questions of American history students as the human volume science. They would have been revealed a long time ago. So also we have to observe what is actually hyper-evidential. What got in the way of this? One of the things is people that are pretending they don't see evidences. What evidences do people have? And where and how they say that itself is evidence. See, we have courts that are offensively affront as certain kind of victims, sickly distinctly from the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, kept with them, complete strangers. That insidiousness of people A through Z. For example, we have to be able to counter the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures at all locations. But to do this, we have to show that which is actually recorded, which are these actually recorded roles. For example, overtly / insidiously, when people make opinions relevant or convictions relevant to ones that when they not, in other words, they're not only true, but they're true in that, as that way that wants to and can only protract as the soul's nature of truth always now accepted. All exceptions are demonstration. In other words, there are exceptions that are a demonstration of the same thing. In other words, like acting, it's not real life, but that's real life. It's collusion with the news sides of it. And so that's a certain kind of victim predator too. And one of the things the styles got away, one of the ways they got away with it is by pretending we're calling them predators. In other words, they said they were predators, and they lie about their motivations too. So we have to be able to say about what's actually simultaneous. Otherwise, they keep using their locations to stack fake things, and they hear what we're saying online, and they try to adapt. Because already through lifetimes and administrations, all treatments that went through, all that were formal, informal, and even at locations and next to all locations, mixed in there with little phenomena everybody misses. Because once you entertain sensibilities, positive and negative treatments that blame other things, others, or selves for the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and you defend that, then you increasingly can't afford any individual to use what is being demonstrated to them, to every individual, by nature, for the relevance of the sickly distinctly against the Native Americans, against the colonists A through Z, and against Americans A through Z, and then further as Native Americans A through Z. We should send them compost while working with them to organize what to do with it. We should enable them more space. Means not one Native American should go without a home.
No one should go without a home. And the rest of the homelessness, they with us. We are to beg to be another tribe, a hyper tribe, a hybrid tribe, and that too through them though, through their body, more reliefs. We would increase their means to claim syntactically reliefs too from this way. Humanity pray. So we need pantheism slash hyper pantheism because pantheism has been preserved takes on it have been self recorded, have inherent active and progressive demonstration how they self value, criminally foreign influenced um, uses of history and acceptations of history being and having been. And where that is being, it is increasingly valuing that having been. And where that is true simultaneously, how that is true simultaneously, it is manifest with where and how we are syntax nature manifest, with where and how we are identity nature manifest actually. So physics, metaphysics, and identity, all three of them have relativity to what is positive and to negative simultaneously. But this science, it uses what is greater than everything that is also while simultaneously how it is individually grouped and together bound. What is hot and cold is bound with warmth that can be further positive. Positive can be further a criminal insidiousness nature can make a positive treatment. Rely and increasing criminal insidiousness natures like wrongdoers are increasingly reliant upon simultaneously overtly slash insidious positive and negative treatments simultaneously as identity treatments, simultaneously as title value treatments, simultaneously as locations, distinctions, details, finite, active, and progressive, like sequence truth value. See, no one has to pay attention to details and to honesty with reception of the law. And as the nature of the law, which would have revealed the needs to discern the distinction, but there's a difference between what is simultaneous nature, a nature being to when I would say that I say it this way, a nature, I refer to an identity as a nature because we're following where and how it is invisible but still discernible. Its identity, volume, the extent we can discern of it, its identity of relationship to itself, the extent we can discern of it, and the value of that, the extent we can discern of it, and where and how it wants and needs us to discern how it is invisible but still discernible three ways distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously, and how they are all increasingly valued, and how it is further positive or negative simultaneously to two other simultaneous positive to themselves simultaneously only when it is positive also to sequence value true before the order of the finite. Now, the smallest detail was generated. Yeah. Vaccines prepared the whole species. If you guys have the courage, any leader, especially America, Ukraine, Russia, you guys have no right to speak for about courage. Any side. And you guys got, I'm going to show you about how to speak for black. It has nothing to do with color. Never did. This consciously took humanity to physical cultural treatments, measuring and maintaining how physics, metaphysics, and identity are three distinct cultures, three distinct cultural sciences, but three distinctly bound too, as 1/3/5. Identity is a sequence nature, as really are manifest cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall. Here, Anthony Wall, play Romulus Wall, a 10. Republic calls us home again, each one. So the science of being male and the science of being female, even that science, all exception, nature, and demonstration of the same thing. Tactical ulterior from what nature really wants and needs us to be communicating about and as, and be aware of. Vaccine. I teach you things. So little kids, they're closer to the finite. They look more like the finite. They're elderly. They look more now the progressive, middle age. So emotions course is about the simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous. But this method measured and maintained syntactically everybody to defend themselves and defend others in uses of emotions and get while getting involved with other people's business. Also relevant to where and how the databases are involved at the campuses. And the news media has been attaching me and others to fake locations, words, fake ties to other people, fake dangers of ties to other people. Part of how they got away with this is part of how they've been using truths to lie. For example, truths relative to where and how they're not supposed to say things and communicate or communicate things about their relativity to and uses of the family members of each age of them too. They use the ages of it because they have to hide the same illusions and uses of locations with illusions that are also as fact, human nature, predicate acts roles, and way worse for the predicate acts delivery system method, singular roles, but it's a method slash S. So we cannot tell American history properly by not showing how we used remotely were courts that were involved with witch trials and Jim Crow laws and counters to them that were using and increasingly defending criminally foreign influence, fact nature qualities and aspects, and timing and identity uses, not realizing and physical delusions as victims, being and having been employed to fact nature responses, to increasingly screen what is increasingly being demonstrated. So needs it increasingly blamed on other increasingly engineered motivations, nature's needs, interests, apparent and actual, but also with made up, and even when actual, with made up additional, in control of it, hierarchically. It's it's a it's a fact human nature method, but then it invests people of all identity ground locations, needing to collude with offensive and has offensive evidence reception, data reception, identity reception predators and hurting anyone who notes it. So only, in other words, as part of it, and all that is used remotely. So what we have to do is observe too, where and how takes on passions, defenses of passions and emotions, and of opinions or convictions regarding uses of names, even like of Putin's. What's behind that? It's only and where and how they have rights and needs to do counters and things like that with syntactically, misinformation, counter misinformation. They're left out and leave out exceptions. In other words, our nations can admit, if we allow them to, that and how they came through schools that left out the increasing value of the extortion and of the identity thefts and frauds method against our founders. That was a method that would make, if anyone would speak up against the system that had everyone locked into it, they would be sensed and hurt. And it was increasingly making it, while I was making it blaming on things others themselves, it was relevant to people's takes on the times. And so then they would be defending roles with it. So you guys are still self-value defended roles, stealing the identities with the identity and with others of our founding parents because of a certain type of victim predator you are. Because you had replaced the short words and revelations since your younger stages, campuses A through Z. So the top of the Z, the zenith, it points back towards A, alpha, alphabet. That is Earth's distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous value relative to the rest of space/existence. Inside, what generated it, the complete, simultaneously greater than, and more powerful and mightier than. All that to get individually together and grouped. And the only thing that can be power and might, while as the order of the finite at the same time. Control the mind, boxings. I teach you things but long. Since them ancient times. The campus name, each campus name was still re-engineered. Boxings. Boxing, wrestling, martial arts. So like a martial arts instructor, instructors would teach us how to defend ourselves physically. I have to teach you. We have to teach each other so we can teach each other. I mean, so we could have taught once and for all how to use this, how to defend ourselves with metaphysical treatments of black or white or any color. Manifest it with those treatments syntactically is way/s. But we have to use what is hyper invisible, / invisible, but still discernible. This which the ancient languages are revealed to teach. L, longing. LM, M, the middle 13th letter, mother. And neutrality right next to mother. And omega right next to that. MNO. See, mother distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously is omega and is alpha, is the human volume science as it actually is. as what is going to cause us to be valued distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, and slash hyper simultaneously here as Earth, positive unto itself, so valued to the top of the Z that forces more of it made here, more forever nature that is also positive unto itself, as the rest of space nature with here as Earth with no criminal foreign influences, no, but our one species long. So, and how we value going to outer space and used remotely too, no. See, American history can't be taught without the use of the words of the phrases like criminally foreign influenced. This preaching method knew that the phenomenon of modern nations would be incapable of countering the real causes of criminally foreign influenced locations, areas, and states, roles with instances between ourselves, positive and negative treatments that are criminally foreign influence, and needs to counter that as fact human nature without, and they knew that they made only capable of people only capable of countering it by blaming other things, others, or selves, rather than the breaching method, which again is method slash S and has remote control of all that. How do you think it kept people involved with those crazy laws, north and south entrenched? Not one has wrenched. Republic free. The Revolutionary War is not the revolution. Nowhere to shoot. See whites of eyes. Attend. Nor how. You know, how do you shoot with the camera too? And how long acting has stood. So we have to bring hyperacting. We have to bring the hypersciences, hyperjournalism. I am not a journalist. I'm not a licensed journalist. All exceptions in exception nature through their locations uses as fact should be nature wise. Through the use of other people's names and defenses of their takes on simultaneous what is actually recorded. And or on their treatments of emotions, their takes on other people's emotions. They affect people to anger against themselves, so they can pretend they perceive it for other reasons, and so they can have other people have that block, as one of too many things at once for them to be able to handle sensory wise. Where and how they've been hiding live aggressions because because they've been involved with that other locations, our own and the foreign and everything all mixed. So we have to understand the five identities of hyper archetypal criminal enterprise. We have to understand modern countries as archetypal criminal enterprises. We have to understand how taken manifest were transnational criminal enterprises, interstate criminal enterprises, and an identity of criminal insidiousness inherent to opinion slash convictions A through Z. For example, regarding uses of opinion slash convictions and shock and awe and delusions regarding all that is evidential slash hyper evidential, where any treatment of black or Jim Crow law or Native American or any physical culture is manifest. I tell it best. Not one has spoke as truth and has exception nature, and demonstration of the same thing. It's important to where and how. It is each volume, but simultaneously, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper simultaneously further too. This one species has been criminally foreign influence and self-valued, legalized criminally foreign influence too long. So precedents and statutes and roles with them. Same way the overt criminal enterprises they show us on television, like here we hear about in the news, killers, things like that. They came through these campuses. Also, they're just blaming other people for things they did and do, and no one's watching. Vaccines through tellers who tell lies. All right, so we have to, in other words, and then the three branches of government were involved with this. So countries A through Z are those archetypal criminal enterprises. They are victims to a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. And we can conceive this syntactically. I don't have to be a lawyer. Their treatments on the relativity, their non-treatments of how psychology experts where criminally foreign influence, delusions wrought, and roles with the courts. And the counters to all the corruption like that, for example, right through wars. So much ignores real truth. And much gets away with it because it increasingly has such victims and tragedies used and stuff like that. Where and how they had people at the end of the whip with slavery. See, they're making positive and negative treatments. We're gonna discern this method, and we're gonna discern who's getting in the way of that. Now, who's playing? If there's things at instances at locations, they can't handle that. There's no because they're representatives of color or of no matter what it is of physical culture. Because everyone's been taught this to blame other things, others themselves, and they've been exploiting it. This method knew that they'd be teaching other and valuing locations, areas, and states collusion having been perfected between strangers, where how the interbranch, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, those five identities, even in the opinions of A through Z, in other words, where how they are really manifest at all locations. What are really the motivations of people that bully others or just claim to bully others, and how that's mixed, and how there's like just in other words, they have syntactic relationships into descriptions of crime scenes, measured and maintained, worse than incapable of, and incapable of, only capable of not affording discerned that which nature is actually demonstrating in all locations, areas, and states, relevant to where and how, other than the short words and revelations our founders left us to protract, were told in their place or pace, and how that is gotten away with. So the people use the knowledge of the law to get over on life, to get over on identities, course, as nature's pure and native true, species body. Oh, republic long, boxing is strong, but give it rest. I tell it best. We demand the nature of the law to care as parents. We demand where and how it has not been. Blame not on other things, others ourselves. We demand to know who or what is in its way, and it's not coming through withstanding. Student dies. All rise. It's going to come through what nature needs to really. What's that water? What is it capable of? Where water is, we could lift it. Is it in other words? Then you have to go, well, what's really going to cause negative? We have to replace that phrase. I don't know who came up with the phrase, hunter or gatherer. we have to call them prevented from cultivating people, and or I don't know what age they refer to that as, but in other words, the takes on the ages past, they couldn't. They had they were already identifying the grounds. See, criminal insidiousness as an identity of the ground, electrical engineering, as English is an electrical engineering by what is positive or negative to its parts. Control your hearts, discern the soul. It surges to all things and even force. Behold. See, we can only be, so prayer is a certain type of contemplation. See, but the breaching method took all the words and values and made them mean other, worse than obfuscate. That which is actually being demonstrated to us by nature, pure, native, pure. And when positive unto itself, also as itself. Repent. And so, in other words, one way we can do this is with native compost. And if they don't have the space to put it, in other words, there's Native Americans that they don't have space for it. We make this. And we claim all identity of the ground locations, not only tactically denatured, not only being and having been tactically denatured, and that being and having been employed tactically denatured, and uses of it having been gone down. Because wait till you see what that was. So that's the game we play. We make a hybrid native tribe, and you explain to people exception and exception nature. Like, for example, they never had rights to, no one had right to speak for the economy and to deny the value of exception and exception nature where the economy originally instilled. Economic treatments, opinions, and convictions did not have rights originally instilled. To deny the value of how sickly, distinctly Native Americans and everyone else was prevented and is prevented rights and reliefs from even from in the suburbs, let alone in the urban areas. That which is designed to cause negative value nature progression, that people stacking is overtly being and having been affected, measured and maintained, blamed on other things, others themselves, but by a breaching method. It is unnatural. Defenses of it are unnatural. No, they cannot afford a quality of fact, cheap nature, short words used properly at all locations. Increasingly, they are valuing and having value. People at each age, influenced, forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded to attach people's words to descriptions and sequence shifts and try to make fake and to hide make exceptions fake. Acting. They put paint arrays are painted. All data, evidence, and identity reception and perception is the complete possession of a breaching method that is hyperarchetypal sophistication. It has complete self-valued roles through such like wars and where and how species bleeds. And it knew it measured and maintained, it perfected, measured and maintained uses of responses to such. Responses to the World Trade Center attack were and are effectively used to measure and maintain. Remote uses of all locations originally still complete possession of them, criminally foreign influenced, self-valued criminally foreign influenced. slavery in North and South, natures of it juxtaposed sickly distinctly, effectively to keep how sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. So, in other words, besides the breaching method, the only other thing it has to do with metaphysics is rolls with it. It is unnatural, but as criminal and ceaseless nature, and nature itself is demonstrating this cancer, this slavery method slash S. So we have to understand such a critical science critically, not lying about passions and emotions and pretending that's care, not lying about what's calm and who could defend their takes on calm. They have, in they have their motivations. Where people do their most evil, they're offensively trying to establish motivations criminally, where they have roles with this identity theft, fraud, slander method. So New York, I'll donate this to you guys, and we'll get it going. Then you guys will donate it to the country, and we'll replace it with something else. Hyperjournalism, and you guys will own it. Hyperjournalism, and we cannot tell a lie, and we cannot afford the lies of all who stand. They are incapable of defending their logic to pretend that they believe that America is free. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. So Americans, we're gonna use we're most overtly slash insidiously at New York City, our own part of the human volume, with other countries like Ukraine and Russia. They have people right there ready to be a semi-agency and or a hyper-native tribe. And as representatives of the science of pantheism slash hyperpantheism, that is led by the value of what is actually hyper simultaneous, the identity of what is actually hyper simultaneous, and it's the actual way of method, the actual method of discerning it, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that, and how to use that with a method of prayer that is contemplation, not using faith at all. That uses the value of the simultaneous contemplation of what witch trials were simultaneously, and our value as increasingly what they were value as is increasingly valued now. What witch trials were simultaneously with what slavery was, even if they made up what witch trials were. Where and how they blamed on other things, where and how they leave out critical details, like where and how George Washington had to leave slavery in Wethersfield, Connecticut, in Hartford, in North America, in New York City, in Boston, simply distinctly from how slavery was left in the South. It was left by a breaching method that was measuring and maintaining that no one had syntactically the means to counter itself properly. It was a measuring and maintaining that everyone would blame its roles with negative value nature progressions, acts, natures, acts like predicate acts, blaming on other things, others, themselves. It was measuring and maintaining their defenses of that. It was propagating their simultaneous defenses of fact, human nature, qualities, and aspects, and positive and negative treatments that were our simultaneously identity treatments, syntactically. This is where and how we are quality as fact should be nature, as law actually. It does not leave out metaphysics and identity's course. It is surging through all things and even force. Boxing, seeing while distinctly, non-distinctly, and even further simultaneously, and even further hyper simultaneously, as science actually reveals. So I'll drop the guns, so none need shields. So evolution's fruits and means are handed help. So then, to show more ways. So then, to show and to keep in nature that when those ways are wrong, or if they're wrong, we could adapt like that or carefully, but like that for where we can't do it carefully. Those standards are worthy to speak for one person who bled. They have to pretend passions and emotions. Then they have to pretend they're being honest about that. They increasingly have to self-value how there are all these actually recorded evidential and hyper-evidential proofs that they don't care a cent. And we'll examine the roles of self-value with those methods and natures of identity theft, fraud, slander, and medical corruption that were really most responsible, for example, for what they call the Holocaust as victims, as this method that has all victims, use words and phrases to defend themselves, making it harder to counter the predicate acts delivery system method roles there with uses of physical culture. It leaves out the means to discern it. We have to discern from we came from before the religions were demonstrating the sciences. The law was already corrupt. Treatments of positive and negative are already being and having been used criminally for and influence both the positive treatments and the negative treatments at all instances, at all identity ground locations. Memories work. You're your own. You stand abridged. Exceptions and exception nature courses forbid. More and more they've been paying fake exceptions at locations, areas, and states. You don't have, forget about it. Oh, you press this to assign it. Oh, we have the economy going. Unspoke for each. Like what just one teach. Boxings. Twill end wars things. Not calling names of leaders. Unless the person calling the names is not just trying to get some more, unless they're really trying to show out. In other words, that the predicate acts delivery system method, that's what's actually recorded. Vaccines. So countless people like that we agree. New York City, free. Now. And there is this way. But it requires admitting and countering where and how that breaching method had this entertained everywhere else too. What unfolded. This keeps it what is invisible but still discernible to and as the value of hot or cold. It is not the warmth, but it is how all three are demonstrating the value of simultaneous and of the hyper simultaneous. See, warmth is still in the hands of and as criminal insidious natures of positive and negative treatment / negative treatments and collusion, identity treatments and collusion, sequence value treatments and collusion, like the value of how the suburbs are tactically denatured involved with slavery of humanity, everyone. Sickly distinctly too to keep that hid. That's also valued that everyone sickly distinctly was hurt because it shows that it was to keep how non-distinctly with other things too. They show it conclusively. How this was is not realized yet is also recorded as actually recorded. Beer, black pupils beer as each see whites of eyes, see suits of ties, religion, religion here or there. Again, vaccines, thank you. It's no joke. And you keep it jokes. No disrespect for the comedians that make jokes about it. It's just, it's shock and awe. Everyone speaking through other people that prevents mandated law. They use those locations. Everyone speaks to other. They put fake things in databases. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know. That's why mandated law said other. See, with the people investigations of things, they're letting people on. So they already made a certain type of victim predator all identity ground locations, all identities of sophistication / non-sophistication. Each age of fact should be nature, kept as sense and sensibilities needing to self-value. Positive and negative treatments, identity treatments with illusions to self-value how they need to hide sequence shift self-value, where and how they have the child abuse method, and then exploitations of the outcomes of it, and where they have the motivations of that, also used by worse, and also their motivations, narratives, manifest, are also used by the breaching method. That is also part of the answer / ask to where and how such overt / insidious lead criminally foreign influenced fact, human nature, quality and aspects, qualities and aspects, and delusions simultaneously are only allowed to speak for when subject treatments are brought up. And so also bringing up where and how they make subject treatments individually grouped and together, offensively in collusion with that which is being and having been planting fact, human nature oriented, and physical evidence is oriented federal rules of evidence is crime, sequence shifts, such illusions and narratives are tied to that. And their narratives by their motivations, even down to the timing of the people with ad placements on the networks and people that work for those companies and their narratives and they're about their motivations involved with all kinds of nature things. Because even though there were uses of where and how syntactically manifest sense and sensibilities manifest and such, where and how a whole bunch of serious things are brought up by the same people who get brought up with identity theft frauds instances, where and how falsified police reports are made and stuff like that. They even do it like that to me. The people call the police and put fake things in the police departments. Originally, still is one of the things that kept all locations, areas, states, criminally foreign influence, delusions, raw, and preventing this conversation from being done and understood already, because they were preventing the fruits and gifts of where and how we can be this quality of fact, human nature, per where and how we are actually individually bound, individually grouped and together, not as criminal insidiousness as nature, but as nature that is also positive too, and as its system pure, vaccines. So someone wants to make aggressive are non-aggressive, that's all right as long as they can defend. You know, proper quality of fact sheet. You can't leave out how each country was as tortured by this. Proofs of it, of the suit and ties, entertaining. In other words, there's no freedom here in America. There are a lot of examples of it. It was never liberated. And the people who want to deny it, how they get away with it is their roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders. And but for example, one of the ways they get away with it, pretending such as politics, criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, precedents, fabricating audio and video to hide it afterwards. Uses of the news media with this. You guys don't know how things work. You will see. New York gang, species body, species coach is here. Attend. All these will agree, and all will mend. So we can put the footings of the infrastructure more vast and deep, wide, greater than, more finite than. What zoning keeps us safe? Where deep still writhes. Not one has yet been patriot, been free, been real, been true. I tell no lies, but alone. All rise, be trial tribes, religion, train, come home. Ye species body, wake. City must break. Then found this seed. All gather round, all gather round. I bid you forth, please read. Till last year, fall to sleep and then receive. Till then, till next you wake. We gang. 'Twas not yet won. 'Tis wed revolutions. Plead. 'Tis not through war, 'tis won. Through facts too pure and right. 'Tis native pure. Why presidents must try to free what's chief or lose. Forever's fight. We have now to be that quality of diffusion using its system. While our temporary identity is an extent of positive we can't help but be. Heaven and hell were revealed as tools of science, as what is actually demonstrated manifest. With the manual of our human volume science. So we could use this, the metaphysical tool of black or white, black pupils, species body, rage. Some stay calm, but none hurt one or sense it all. We're done. One way alone, boxing is fun. The species body. If alone we shall box, what speaks for bombs and wars and guns? Suits and ties, whatever kinds of socks. It can't, in other words, on the other end of it, it can't even afford the revelations in the with the inherent active and progressive with the sciences using this one tool, let alone that which is also simultaneous, like witch trials. The identity of the ground's identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that which is surging through all things, and while greater and while as more finite, while has the far value of the finite. Here, I teach you long. who disbelieves. Please have them pick one name in sequence, please. And here are 10 who disbelieves. You get their name. Spell it right. This is a police report. Who disbelieves? All locations, areas, and states at America, at Russia, and at Ukraine, they're criminally foreign influence. The rest of species, body, nations gather around. You are all in trouble. Where you want to be. Blame it on the blame it syntactically. Explain to the people how you blame negative value to progression, like predicate acts. You guys had to counter it by countering groups wrong, by valuing them being and having been grouped wrong. That sustained forged them correctly. They're correct. They're made identities that claim syntactically, So Harvard Hospital. So we'll go into the overt criminal enterprises, private criminal enterprise. Those 5 identities of criminal insidiousness. And if someone could tell Judge Napolitano they've been using his Facebook page, where and how they don't have the right to do that. Them, the company, and the FBI, and other agencies and courts, and their own Facebook pages. They've been using them for crime methods, identity theft, fraud, slanders methods, relevant, again, where it's hyper relevant, increasingly valuable for negative things or for positive things. Where everyone's extorted, hyper extorted, and pretending others simultaneously. I teach you well, but long. YouTuber Anthony Wall. YouTube.com/Anthony Wall. No, /Romulus Wall, rather. That's Anthony. I don't know who that other YouTube is. Mine is youtube.com/user/Romulus Wall. And so the science goes. Romulus and Remus founded Rome. But as the science goes, that was Romulus. Where and how they were valuing. Where and how the science /S needed to be taught. Where and how. Using where and how yin yang is manifest the way it is. Yin yang with no and between it. With a slash between it, like an S. Capital S, no. And alpha and omega. So note how yin yang, as humanity's volume science, women and men are the same volume. But somehow there are exceptions, where how also simultaneously you are distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Also hyper simultaneously, no. A 10. Because it's further positive or negative to itself. And that's where and how prayer comes in per science of pantheism /hyper pantheism. So we play pantheism maneuvers. We show the countries how people make A, therefore B treatments, how people make opinions /convictions towards with economic realities. But they are left out how there are all kinds of ways that those economic realities entertain the way they're entertaining them. They're leaving out a whole bunch of stuff they're missing, and they can't entertain that and defend the Constitution simultaneously in a country. At the same time, they have to value exception nature, being and having been manifest. To pretend not to realize, etc. Have to value streams of people going before courts of people that police had to interact with and or had to force, fake things about. because they're keeping everyone differentially, but increasingly, commonly criminally foreign influence, increasingly through other motivations, natures, needs, interests. So syntactically, people will say other, and or when they're trying to say other in that too, they won't be allowed that quality of secrecy of fact sheet nature to deal with what is actually simultaneously recorded. So all exceptions, exception nature tied to the three branches of government have been kept criminally foreign influenced. Also would deal with criminal enterprises, private ones, killers, in that nature of killer instinct and a victim predator and delusion, where and how people pretend passions and emotions with the media locations and with the database locations where they won't follow mandated law and where and how it is relevant where they pretend other and how they got away with it and get away with it also being, hyper evidential. Please share this with Judge Napolitano and or with Fox News and Judge Deneen and Judge Brown, Judge Mathis, anyone. May please get a Weathersfield judge. I mean, Weathersfield into branch with the judicial branch offices too now, and Hartford courts and the Britain Superior Court. They are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed before the World Trade Center attack, having been roles with various natures of organized crime, child abuses, elderly abuses, and criminally foreign influence uses of um, intercities, interstates, international systems with other countries as victims, but as victim predators. And then pretending we're calling them predators, for example, one of the ways they get away with such. So WFSB, NBC Connecticut News, and Fox Connecticut News, please get them to respond for the fake words and ties to other people and nature's ties to other people that they pretended with the news media. He also fake ties to doctors that they pretended me tied to, and as a kid, and with the and with and with a and they did this with a principal child abuser. I caught them doing other natures of federal crimes with, and recorded uses of how they have juxtaposed natures of abuses of each age and types of counters to it and collusion with it. And again, per remote uses of and needs by their narratives, by their motivations, again, needed by the breaching method, effectively, originally, and still, how it actually works. Breaching method slash S. Anthony Wall, YouTube. Anthony Sylvester, Raymond Wall, here reporting. YouTube, is there a new feature where we can do live? Like I could interview someone or someone could interview me, or we could be going down. We could be using it for the same thing. Vaccine, ancient gaming system. My, yeah, I don't know. We're allowed to. How the, all right, thank you, people. Humanity. This is what this is about. The parent plan, and we stack um, pantheism slash hyper pantheism. We mean stack. We stack the qualities and aspects of our culture slash S. Like say there's a type of fruit or something, or something, something that people could want or need. In other words, people shouldn't be starving, and people shouldn't be set up in this trap where the way things are going to fold are going to keep, you know, responses to it. Name fact human nature responses, not just physical ones, and the defenses of that. See, was employed to where and how no one wanted and needs. Everyone's the victim of self-value roles. They use the locations for how identity works. Every identity individually grouped together at each formal location is simultaneously criminally foreign influenced and delusions raw. That's how bad That slavery method / S was is. So let me tell for you. So teller's fake will be revealed and or will repent instead offensively. Share. Share this video. Share this wisdom deep. See through each Jeep, but two discern. Not one has spoken for the nature of the law, nor parents' rights and means, and needs to admonish. So what it is. Thank you. Just please, why you slow me down? Don't slow me down. Don't slow the Legion down.